Brian Tyler Cohen recently talked a little bit about, just sticking with Trump for a moment here, the threats he made against the prosecutor's wife. Let's just let the man introduce it. I've got some thoughts.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, Trump reposted onto Truth Social a swipe against Alvin Bragg's wife. That's the Manhattan District Attorney. Now, he did this as he's awaiting arraignment in a trial being prosecuted by Alvin Bragg. So what impact could this have, and is it more likely that we could see a gag order against Trump now?
Yeah, this is really interesting, and it's getting into dangerous territory because when you look at these reposts, right, a journalist found some information about Alvin Bragg's wife posting that, Donald Trump is a racist, Donald Trump should be held accountable for his crimes, not exactly, late breaking news to anyone.
Right.
But after the reporter posted this information about Bragg's wife, Donald Trump started reposting it. Now, there's nothing in it in and of itself that would constitute a threat or that arguably would be improper. But we know Donald Trump's MO. He starts to put names in the public square, and the signal he is sending is that this person is a problem to me. What does that inspire some of his followers, the least among his followers to do? Well, we know it can incite them to violence. So he knows what he's doing. He hasn't done anything that is directly actionable yet. But boy, he's sending that dangerous signal. And, he's got priors. He's done this kind of thing before.
Point of contention. And do bear in mind, I really like to qualify this. A lot of folks that have these opinion shows, in fact, a lot of the folks that I poll that have these opinion shows, have a good reason for their opinion. And I often talk about my qualifications, not so that I can say, look at this impressive thing that I've done, but so that you never can say that I lied to you, or that I would presume to be, to actually think that you should take my word over Glenn Kirshner's. But, because I feel this, it's an observation I've made, I'd like your thoughts on this. A lot of this stuff seems like the sort of thing that ought to be prosecuted, and everybody says, "Oh, it's close to the line," and then the authorities actually say, "We're going to call that over the line," and everybody goes, "Yeah, that makes sense." Glenn Kirshner, I'm sorry, I'll do a more respectful freeze frame here. Glenn Kirshner is saying, hey, I don't think he's quite crossed the line yet. What? Man, come on. Putting a prosecutor's family in the spotlight like that, that's not a violation of something? Come on. Look, here's what's important to remember with all of this Trump stuff, all of it. That when a judge looks at this and makes a decision, it's not a matter of debate whether the law applies to Donald Trump. Let's treat it like that all the time. Does the law apply to Donald? That's not up for debate. What the judge is deciding is whether what Donald Trump is doing is a violation of the law. If Donald Trump gets away with this, no one can be held accountable for threatening the family of the person prosecuting them or bad-mouthing their judge during a trial. That includes rapists, spousal abusers. My God, let's try that again. That includes rapists, spousal abusers, celebrities, politicians, cult leaders, mobsters, morons, and people other than Trump. It's just, we have to take this seriously. And I can't imagine how you include the spouse of the person prosecuting you in your rantings online. and you don't get some sort of a punishment, some sort of a worsening of your situation for that behavior, because that behavior by itself, from this old chunk of coal's humble perspective, is a problem and shouldn't be allowed.
Directly actionable yet, but boy, he's sending that dangerous signal. And he's got priors. He's done this kind of thing before. So I think all of this now may become sort of fodder for discussion at Donald Trump's first court appearance.
How does this work in the sense that what he did may not in and of itself be a crime, but how do the circumstances play into this? Is there some degree of circumstantial evidence that could show that what he was trying to do by virtue of doing something that's not necessarily in and of itself a crime, but where the intention is to cause her violence? Does that have any impact here?
The First Amendment does come into play here, right? The First Amendment protections are broad, are sweeping, and that's precisely the way we want them to be. The problem is when you have a guy like Trump who has demonstrated a pattern, throw names into the public square, hoping that it inspires something that will then inure to his benefit, it may inure to the danger of the person he's naming. It becomes a really murky area. What can a judge do to try to push back, or perhaps put a gag order in place to direct a defendant, stop posting about the prosecutor's family? I think that's fair game, even though I'll tell you, Brian, in my 30 years, I never encountered this kind of stuff that we're now seeing with Donald Trump.
Oh my gosh, do we really have a troll? You guys are right. Oh, I'll tell you, that is a sign, indeed. Oh, please tell me they're trying to sell pills of some sort. Oh, I'll look at it in a moment. Oh, that's just flattering. Hi, troll, if you're there. I'm just so excited to have you. I'm probably gonna boot your ass in a moment, but hey, and come by for Friday Peace Talks. We've got things to talk about. All right, back to the degradation of democracy.
Certainly, I never encountered it with a public official like Donald Trump. There were circumstances when we thought people were saying some things that might endanger a witness in the case, but this is Donald Trump taking it to a whole nother level. So, I think this arraignment hearing coming up for Trump is going to be unlike one we've ever seen before because of the novel issues that the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and the judge are going to have to wrestle with.
Well, with that said, you mentioned the judge in this case. Donald Trump also attacked the judge online. What impact could that have then?
Yeah, this is a really interesting development because Donald Trump posted something about Judge Marchand, who is the presiding judge. In his case, he was also the presiding judge in the criminal prosecution of the Trump Organization, a case in which Alan Weisselberg, Donald Trump's chief financial officer, testified for the prosecution, even though Alan Weisselberg was no friend of the prosecution. He kind of had 1 foot in the DA's office and 1 foot in the Trump Organization. So Donald Trump posted about Judge Marchand the following. He said, Judge Marchand hates me. That's obviously a lie. He said Alvin Bragg handpicked Judge Marchand to be the presiding judge in Trump's criminal prosecution. That's a lie. That's not the way judges are assigned to cases.
Yeah.
And he said, and Judge Marchand railroaded Alan Weisselberg, my chief financial officer, into pleading guilty by basically threatening him. Again, another lie.
Threatening him by saying, we're going to talk about this in court one way or another. And if you can't prove that you didn't do this thing that it looks like you did, we're going to take the fact that you made us fight you over it into account. Also known as just presenting the facts. What are you talking about, Donald Trump? Oh, good God. This time is going to be much funnier in retrospect. Like, we're going to get so many wonderful comedies that are set in the 2010s and 2020s. It's going to be amazing. It's freaking terrifying right now. It's like having a methed out clown at the controls to the roller coaster. Like, okay, it's terrifying right now. But if we make it through this, some crazy how, Jesus Christ. And by the way, we're going to get just ruthlessly made fun of that this is what it took for us to get ourselves under control. This is how bad it had to get. This is rock bottom for America, folks. Like, this is us waking up with the near empty whiskey bottle cradled against us, covered in our own sick in an alley. It's not a good place. But fortunately, we take this wake-up call to, get just a little bit woke about what we are.
So I am certain this is going to become the topic of discussion at Donald Trump's arraignment. You cannot make these wild, outrageous lies, throw them into the public square, and hope that they sort of blow up and poison the jury well. So there's something called recusal, right? When a judge has an interest in a case, he or she is supposed to recuse themselves, remove themselves from the case.
No,
if you have, for example, a family member involved in a case, well, then you as the judge can't preside over that case. If you have a financial interest involving one of the parties in the case, the judge can't preside over.
I don't think this is where he's going. Just to be clear up front, while he does the wind up to the point he's making, you don't get to pick your judge, though. You don't get to say, like, the judge is an a-hole. That judge can't give me a fair trial. They know that I called him an a-hole. That's crazy.
That kind of a case. It feels like Donald Trump is trying to tell so many inflammatory lies about Judge Marchand that he's hoping maybe Judge Marchand will remove himself, will have to recuse from the case. But here's the thing. Defendants don't get to orchestrate their judge.
Yeah.
Think about it. If a defendant could make outrageous lies about a judge and then that judge was ethically obligated to remove himself from the case and have a new judge appointed, well, wouldn't that just inspire defendants to engage in precisely this kind of conduct?
Which makes it a really bad idea to poke that particular bear. I can't stress enough. Really bad idea to mouth off to the judge who's in charge of your fate soon.
But here's what it might do, Brian. I think these lies, this disinformation, this propaganda, really designed to turn the people against Judge Marchand and against the prosecution, I think ups the ante that Judge Marchand will impose a gag order, will impose some kind of a narrowly tailored set of restrictions, the do's and don'ts of Donald Trump's speech and Donald Trump's posts.
The real question for me, the real question for me is, will the judge actually have, and this, by the way, all right, let me give this the proper, we're laughing, but let me give it the proper seriousness that it requires, because this is what it's going to come down to. Does the judge have the guts to enforce the gag order? It's not a question of whether or not he needs one. And if he isn't given one, then a gag order means nothing. We shouldn't have them at all. They exist for, if Donald Trump doesn't get a gag order, then gag orders exist only to bully people who aren't powerful. Because he's asking for it. Beyond that, the real question is, what's going to happen when he violates it? Does anybody have any doubt at all that he's going to violate it? Of course he's going to violate it. I'll put a crisp American dollar on that particular event happening. It's going to happen. So, will the judge have the courage, the decency, the interest in justice to enforce it? Are they going to do a serious enforcement? $1,000 fine means nothing to Trump, and the judge doesn't need to learn that. If Donald Trump does a gag order, or has a gag order, violates the gag order, the judge does their warning shot of $1,000 fine. Then Trump violates it again. There's the question. That second time, what's the judge going to do? Are they going to have the guts to say, okay, well, it was $1,000 or 30 days in jail. I gave you the free shot, charged you $1,000, which is nothing to you. You've demonstrated that you don't respect the court. You've demonstrated that you don't respect me. You've demonstrated that you don't respect American law. And so you gonna learn. Here's a jail cell, Mr. Trump, where you do not have access to your cellular phone. Enjoy. That will have to happen. So write it down right now. Let's see if your old pal Jake is right. Gag order has to come. The only reason to avoid it is because the judge chickens out and is afraid of that second time Donald Trump violates it. Gag order has to happen. Donald Trump is not going to respect it. Donald Trump speaks out. Then we have our next test of democracy. Does the judge call him for violating the gag order? When they do, you know they're going to go easy on him first time through, and they're going to say, here's the $1,000 fine. When he violates it again, because now, as we've seen, unless they get a serious punishment, they don't take things seriously. The principle means nothing to them. So that second time, the second time Donald Trump, who has threatened the prosecutor and the judge and the prosecutor's wife, the second time he violates that gag order, does the judge have the courage to put him in a jail cell? If not, we don't have to respect the law in this country. That's what the judge is saying. I don't think that's true, but I think we all have to respect the law, including Donald Trump. And I hope the judge holds him to that standard. Let's let my man Glenn, who's clearly doubting me here, let's do a thumbnail. It's your problem. Let's let him finish up.
Frankly, think it's essential at this point, because if you let it go unaddressed, the way we've let so many other things Donald Trump has done go unaddressed, it's going to get worse, more inflammatory, more inciting, and more dangerous.
Well, that of course raises the question, what happens if and when Donald Trump breaks any gag order that was imposed upon him? What are the consequences of that?
So the judge better not flinch. When a judge sets conditions for a defendant and the defendant intentionally violates.
Just chiming in to acknowledge that I should always let Glenn Kirshner talk for 30 seconds longer than I think he's going to talk for. Because, of course, he knocks it out of the park.
Those conditions, the judge has every right, indeed every responsibility, to then ratchet up the conditions. And the ultimate in a pretrial condition is pretrial detention, jailing a defendant pending trial because the defendant has proved they're unwilling to comply with lesser restrictions designed to promote public safety and give the people a right to a fair trial. Now, listen, a defendant does not have a right to poison the jury pool because the defendant has a right to a fair trial, but the people also have a right to a fair trial.
Okay, now I want to skip ahead a little bit here, and this is a question that I've been throwing around with myself, and it's skipping a bunch of steps, but game this one out with me. What happens if Trump is incarcerated at any point in this process, not necessarily just for the Manhattan DA's case, but just in any of these cases that are bearing down on him? What happens with the Secret Service? Like if Trump is incarcerated, given that they have to be with him at all times, do they get locked up with him?
You know, it's a great question. And the thing is, because it's unprecedented, because these are uncharted waters, no one can answer that question definitively. Now, I've poked around with some of my friends at the Bureau of Prisons and the U.S. Marshal Service, and here is the best answer that I can come up with. And I think it's a leading contender. So, you know, I put a lot of defendants in secure confinement facilities because they were cooperators. You know, I had a hitman who killed 7 people for a criminal organization, and that hitman flipped and testified for us. And we had to keep that hitman safe pending trial, but we obviously
Jesus Christ. Sorry to take the Lord's name in vain there.
also,
as my old teachers would have said, genuinely sorry for blasphemy. But I forget that Glenn Kirshner is a proper professional. Good Lord. And yes, I have no idea regarding the Secret Service. Let's let him talk.
Had to keep that hitman locked up. So there are facilities, I won't name them or say where they are. There are facilities in the United States that are designed to house only cooperating witnesses, where, somebody who is in extreme danger because of the assistance he's providing to the government can also be confined safely.
But if you're putting Trump in one of those, wouldn't he be running into the very people that inevitably there's going to be people that cooperate against him down the line? I'm going to let him finish.
There's no reason that can't be done for Donald Trump. I could envision if a former president of the United States is ordered confined, is sentenced to prison, I could see them actually housing him in one of these facilities and housing only him, keeping all other inmates in other facilities. Here's the other thing that I've learned in talking with.
But is that then solitary confinement? These are weird questions, man. Things I never thought in my wildest dreams we'd be talking about.
Some of my colleagues and former colleagues at the Bureau of Prisons and the Marshal Service, it may very well be that the Secret Service will enter into a memorandum of understanding with BOP, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and the U.S. Marshal Service, which is the agency that handles long-term witness protection issues, to turn over the security detail and the security duties of a former president from the Secret Service to the BOP and the U.S. Marshals, and arrange for this unprecedented situation to be handled that way.
But if he's literally alone, I don't know. I just feel like as strange as this is, what he's saying makes sense to me. Like the guy could wind up in a facility that is there just for him. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I don't care that it's extremely expensive. I want fair treatment of all prisoners, even ones I hate. That's what makes it a principle. But man, I mean, solitary was cruel and unusual when it was done to Michael Cohen. Doesn't make it any different if it's done to Trump. I genuinely don't know how that goes. If you don't have, for example, even his Secret Service with him, maybe that's why the Secret Service stays with him. But then by virtue of your job, I mean, that's hitting capitalism too much, too accurately. Really, literally showing that your job is to go check into prison.
Got it. Because the flip side of that is imagine being the poor sucker who spent his whole life working his way up to be on the presidential detail in the Secret Service, and you end up sitting in a prison cell with the guy because he couldn't not commit crimes.
Not going to happen. They are not going to subject Secret Service officers to, 8-hour shifts in a Federal Bureau of Prisons facility. I do not see that happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, obviously that's something that we'll keep a close eye on. For anybody watching, to keep on top of all of this legal news, whether it's in the Manhattan DA's case or any other case that we're...
Wild times, y'all. Wild times. Well, I might take a whack at combing my hair. I will see you guys. I will see y'all for the live stream that we do in just a couple of hours. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm gonna watch the Majority Report, and then at 2:15, we've got the arraignment of Donald Trump. I will be here. We're gonna start the stream a little bit early. I think 1:45, and we're just gonna be live streaming this puppy. So I hope you'll come back, join me for that. And oh my God, my dog is barking at Jake, says Wicked Foxy Dragon. Who's a good pup? Who's a good puppy? Oh, you good puppy dog. There you go. Hopefully I chilled him out a little bit. What's the dog's name? Let's mess with him just a little bit. I'll call them a good boy or girl. Let's read some of these comments. Wicked Foxy Dragon says, Trump is a gag played on Murica. Oh, yeah, 100%. Ryrie says, or possibly Rye, Rhode Island, says, you would think they would have come up with that contingency, especially after Nixon. Yeah. It's wild to me that that's really not something I'm even aware of what the plan would be. I'm afraid that John McDonough says, I'm afraid that will have to I'm afraid that will have to happen. Issue a fine, second warning. Oh, yeah. Then 8 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours to demand defendant stop certain behaviors. Yeah, that's true. He doesn't necessarily have to be given the full 30 days in jail. They might give him like 10 hours in jail or something like that. And honestly, with a guy as soft as Donald Trump, that might be sufficient. Mars Falcon says the Donald John Trump Memorial Incarceration Center, Buffalo, New York, construction underway. Oh, Lordy, yes. Oh, eating it up. Delicious. John McDonough says the whole Trump thing, how he acts outrageously, his followers, especially in Congress, support it, just turns my stomach. Yeah, it's hard to watch sometimes. Oh, no. Wicked Foxy Dragon says the crazy thing is, or that is crazy. She stopped talking when Brian started talking. This is very strange. All right, your dog has garbage taste. I'm just going to say it. They're a terrible taste in their preference for talking heads. No, I take it back. I will take the pupper's opinion into account. Maybe Wicked Foxy Dragon says, oh my God, her name is Zoe. Hey, Zoe. Zoe? Hey, girl. Listen, who's your good girl, Zoe? Who's your good girl? All right, hopefully. Now I just won her over. You good girl, Zoe. Come on, with your Brian Tyler Cohen favoring. Pup was in agreement with the hair combing comment. Pup understands appearance maintenance is an important component of self-care. Well, there it is. You're right. Fair enough. Well, I'm going to go get to that hair combing then. We're going to be back later on for the arraignment of Donald Trump. Congratulations to everybody that was pushing for equal justice in the United States, to everybody that voted in the representatives necessary to insist on it. A big part of what makes it difficult to keep the energy up is remembering what we did to get here. And collectively, Americans that support decency are the reason why we don't have yet another criminal president getting away with it. I am no longer in the New York case. I'm no longer going to be pushing for anything in particular. That we just watch. Unless and until Donald Trump digs himself deeper with more of his shenanigans, such as threatening the people involved. We'll see.